Presented and produced by the National Public Housing Museum, this is Out of the Archives, an oral history podcast created from interviews with public housing residents from across the United States. I'm your host this month, Mark Juschke. The stories in this episode span from 1960 to the present day, and for a full list of sources, check out the episode notes in your podcast platform. When considering what love is, many varieties come to mind. Romantic love and platonic love dominate our TV shows, movies, and music, but these are only two pieces of the picture. What about love of a place, love of a people, or love of a purpose and principles? This episode, The Act of Loving, shares stories of all sorts of love in public housing, expanding our definition of what love means. Our first narrator, Milton Reed, who lived in the Robert Taylor homes in Chicago from 1961 to 2002, starts this conversation with a story of young love.
I remember a long time ago, I was with this girl. She used to like to go to the boat. We get to the boat. I gave her the last money that I was holding for her, and she lost all that. She said, "Now I don't know how we gonna get home." And I said, "Don't you have a ticket? Tickets to go?" She said, "No, I sold them." She sold the tickets to get the bus back to get home with. She sold them. I said, "How about mine?" She said, "I sold yours too, so I can get some more money and play some more, slot machines." Now I don't know how to get home. She said, "We stuck here. Let's go outside and ask people who are going to Chicago to take us home." So I said, "No, I got a better idea." So I started grabbing the papers that I seen up there. They had on a desk. So I turn them over so I can see the white side of it. Mm-hmm. And I stood up there and I said, "You sit here and I'm gonna just draw you." I said, "Somebody might come along." So I was drawing her. Before I can even finish, I had two guys, a lady, a male and a female. They was white. They said, "Oh, you're an artist." I said, "Yeah." They said, "Can you draw us? What you charge?" I said, $7 for each figure. I just do fast drawing, a quick sketch of a person. He said, "That is nice. That looks just like..." So they said, I told her, "You get up, let them sit down." She got up, and one thing led to another. Nice. Before I knew it, she had $7 and I had $7. I made $14 and we got home. So we had to go to the window and buy the ticket to get home. It didn't cost us that much because we came there. And so I actually said we drew our way home.
Stories of love oftentimes rely on circumstance and good timing. Our next narrator, Daphany Rose Sanchez, who has lived in the Cooper Park houses in Brooklyn from 1983 to the present day, shares about her family's relationship with the New York City Housing Authority, including her family's history at the Marcy houses, as well as some of her parents' romantic shenanigans.
My experience and my relationship with NYCHA housing actually stems way back to my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother had lived and jumped around in a couple of different housing, but winded up in Borinquen and mostly Marcy housing. My grandma was in Marcy houses. My father grew up in Marcy houses. And so I technically was born in Marcy, and then we moved over to Cooper Park houses. And so public housing is something that's near and dear to my heart. It's part of my culture, and it's like ingrained into everything I do. All my family still lives in public housing. My parents no longer live. They left and purchased a home. But the rest of us are still, working, chugging along and living in a place that we can afford. The last place in New York City that is affordable for our community. So that's a little bit about my relationship with NYCHA, which is the New York City Public Housing Authority. So the year I moved to public housing is always such an interesting point because I can't tell. My father is raised in Marcy houses, which is a couple of projects down from Cooper. And my mother lived a couple of blocks away from where I live today. And they met in like the weirdest your parents tell you not to talk to strangers out on the street, right? They're like, don't talk to strangers. But my parents, even though they tell me not to talk to strangers, they decided to talk to strangers in the train. So my dad was one of those Ayo Ma guys at 18, went up to my mother in the L train and was like, Ayo Ma, you're beautiful. And my mother was like, oh my God, like he's saying I'm beautiful. And so my mother went with him to a random club, and then they just hit it off. They had such a great night. They got together, and then they had me.
Our next narrator, Reverend Marshall Hatch, who lived in Chicago's Jane Addams homes from 1960 to 1974, shares his memories of talking to girls. And while his methods were different than Daphne's father's, his recollections are just as vivid and charming.
Now, I grew up, most of my guys were church guys, so I wasn't a gang guy or nothing like that. And so I remember a guy, Rondi Hunter. As a matter of fact, his dad and sister visited my church for the first time a few weeks ago. I hadn't seen them in years. And they actually went to a church right over there in the middle of the projects. Church still over there, Mount Sinai. And his dad was a deacon, my dad was a preacher. And I remember us trying to figure out how, to get a slow dance and what we had to do. And I remember Rodney Hunter, he was a funny guy, and he was a church guy. He said, it's just like if you marching in church, because back then this choir used to march in, and it was just one foot, then the other foot, then the other foot. So Rodney was like, all you got to do, just like you're marching in church, just one foot to one foot. Just learn how to slow dance. That helps. Is a big thing.
What about asking a girl to slow dance?
Oh my goodness, to risk rejection, it just took a heck of a lot of courage. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. You just try to figure out whether or not they like you or not, and then it will make it easier.
So the right song helps.
The right song helps, and then back then. Now I've also taught on this too. As a matter of fact, I just did one for the Valentine's Day. We had called it Love Sunday. And I dealt with, what they used to call courting. Mm-hmm. So I just from years of counseling, I said, now look, in the 50s, the guy would have to ask the girl, can I go steady? So maybe she wears a jacket or something like that, but he'd have to ask, and then it'd be understood. You did make a commitment that we are together. I said, now, by the time it came along with me, it was, can I have a chance? Now, I don't know where that came from, but that was like, a chance to prove myself. I would be the man that you would need. And so often you'd be afraid to actually say it. So in grammar school, we would pass a note, hopefully through a friend that was a friend of her friend, mm-hmm. to get the note to her. And it would just say, can I have a chance? And you have yes or no, circle one. And then often, the girl was in the driver's seat at that point. Mm-hmm. And so, she might send back word, I give you your answer Monday. Oh. And you pass the note on Friday because, you try to do it before the weekend. Yeah. It took you all week to get the courage up to get it to her on Friday. Right. And so, so if you would like, for somebody that you were going with or something like that, then, slow dancing is the reward. That was about as much as you was going to do.
You've been given a chance.
You've been given a chance.
Romantic love just skims the surface of the kinds of love that we share with each other. Our next two narrators are J.L. Gross, who lived in the Lathrop homes in Chicago from 1987 to the present, and WNBA head coach of the Atlanta Dream, Tanisha Wright, who lived in Mon View Heights in Pittsburgh from 1983 until 1999. They share memories about family and friend relationships that nurtured them during their time in public housing.
My grandparents, they were the stalwarts of the family. I probably one of the coolest grandfathers you could ever have because he always believed in wearing white shirts and ties and having his shoes shined and he always had a nice hat on, you know. So he was like, and he was the kindest, easiest going person I ever knew. My grandmother stood about 4'11", maybe 5 feet at the most, but she cracked the whip. You know, whatever she said it once, and that was it. You know, you don't do it, something's coming your way. A shoe, something headed your way if you didn't do what my grandmother said the first time. A shoe, a brush, something. Sure. But it taught me the meaning of respect. You know, I mean, not that I didn't get it from my father or my mother. It's just that my grandmother, she was the matriarch, and what she said went.
Some of my best friends were a pair of twins, twin boys, Bill and Ty. Growing up, we were neighbors pretty much from 5 to about 12 or something like that. They were my best friends. I could just remember we went to school together. They were twins, so they dressed alike. Obviously, I thought I was a triplet with them and wanted to dress alike. We took pictures together, school pictures. We were in the same kindergarten class or first grade. I can't remember. But I just remember standing up next to them, in between them, one on my right, one on my left. I probably have a picture somewhere. Neighbors were great. Everybody took care of everybody. You know what I mean? You became friends very, very easily. But that's one of my fondest memories, was really being really close with those two growing up. And we stayed pretty close throughout, my adolescent years as well. I was raised by my grandmother. My grandmother raised me, Thelma Berry, so I stayed with her. We lived in, growing up in the projects, we lived in 3 different apartments. I think, 27B, 35D, and 38B. So my grandma raised me. She worked nights growing up. I also moved back to New York for a short period of time and lived with a close family member, my cousin Jackie, and also stayed in the project housing there in Smurf Village, 1400 Fireplace. It's very hard to forget these places that you grew up in. Yeah. So she has a heavy influence on who I am today, but definitely my grandmother.
Romantic, familial, and platonic love make up the core of what our culture typically imagines when we think about love. But what about intimacy amongst strangers? Should you love your neighbor, and why? In her last book, The Next American Revolution, Sustainable Activism for the 21st Century, Grace Lee Boggs gives a resounding yes to that middle question. As to the why, the then 96-year-old labor and liberation movement elder argues that we cannot create the world that we dream of without focused and intentional infusion of more love and care into our civic society. Grace urges,
linking love and revolution is an idea whose time has come. We urgently need to bring to our communities the limitless capacity to love, serve, and create for and with each other. We urgently need to bring the neighbor back into our hoods, not only in the inner cities, but also in our suburbs, our gated communities, on Main Street and Wall Street, and on Ivy League campuses.
It is from this notion of love on a public, community-based scale that the National Public Housing Museum was inspired to create our program, 36 Questions for Civic Love. Borrowing from psychologist Arthur Aaron's 1997 study, which explored whether romantic intimacy between 2 perfect strangers could be accelerated by asking each other a set of 36 questions, we made our own list of questions. Ours encourages participants to consider how we love and take care of our communities, asking questions that range from, "What's your favorite kitchen smell?" to more pressing questions like, "What law would you change for the betterment of your community?" Since 2020, our Civic Love Toolkit has been used across the country, all the way from Honolulu to New York City. Interested in learning more? Visit the Civic Love page on our website at nphm.org/civiclove to download the toolkit. We encourage you to activate it in any community you would like to strengthen. Our next narrator firmly believes in the power of civic love, frequently bringing it up when talking to those who look up to him. Here's oral historian Shakira Johnson and narrator, former Representative Bobby Rush, who lived in the Hillard homes in Chicago when they opened from the mid to late 1960s.
And then if you had one thing that you could tell young people about, fighting for racial injustice today opposed to when you were growing up, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that first of all, understand the power of love. And when I talk about love, I'm not necessarily talking about some kind of emotional love like that. I'm not talking about, I'm saying the love that's hard, a love that's challenging, a love that will make you actually be better so that you can do better. That kind of love. It's a love. I mean, you love a person, but that ain't really the kind of love I'm talking about. I'm talking about love that really can define your life. Know that. See, I didn't know all this inspiration and all this determination and all the things that I wanted to do. I didn't know that at the foundation of that was love, all right? And love is, in my opinion, love is the most potent power that God has given his people. And until you can harness that, then you always live lives of frustration. And until you have develop that capacity to love, even to the point where it's beyond sacrifice, where you become fully devoted and to trying to accomplish and achieve something to help mankind. For doing good and making life better for not just yourself, but for others. Loving mankind, loving justice, and hating injustice. See? Not just hating injustice, but loving justice. So much that you want to fight injustice, My Lord, that's a very, very... So I would tell young people, learn the power of love. Learn the meaning of love. Learn the potential of love. Learn how to really, really love, and not just in some kind of emotional, self-gratifying kind of way. I mean, a real capacity to love your neighbor as yourself. Love has to have an object. See, love has to be expressed. Love can't just be articulated. It's a call to action. You see what I'm saying? So that's where you get the capacity to fight for justice. Because it's a call to action. You just I cannot tell my son or my daughter or my wife that I love them and don't ever act like it, don't ever demonstrate it. You got to. You can't sit on love. And so I tell young people, learn the capacity to love and then act out your love in a bold way.
Former Congressman Rush's wise words echo what Bell Hooks wrote in her seminal series of essays, All About Love, New Visions. Hooks explains the relationship between power and what she calls a love ethic.
Awakening to love can happen only as we let go of our obsession with power and domination. Culturally, all spheres of American life, politics, religion, the workplace, domestic households, intimate relations, should and could have as their foundation a love ethic. The underlying values of a culture and its ethics shape and inform the way we speak and act. A love ethic presupposes that everyone has the right to be free, to live fully and well. Embracing a love ethic means that we utilize all the dimensions of love: care, commitment, trust, responsibility, respect, and knowledge in our everyday lives.
As Hooks points out, our society has a long way to go before a love ethic or civic love is prevalent in our society. But there are and have always been individuals who profoundly impact their communities by acting from a love ethic. One such individual is a person that we hold close to our heart at the NPHM, Ms. Beauty Turner, a staple of the Robert Taylor Homes community in the 1990s through its demolition in 2007. We will dive more deeply into Ms. Beauty's story in a future episode of Out of the Archives, but this story from her eldest son, Larry Turner, was so relevant to this theme of love that we just had to include it. Larry lived in the Cabrini-Green homes in 1977, Stateway Gardens in 1989, and the Robert Taylor homes from 1990 until 2000.
Got any memories of your mom? Thoughts about community?
Yeah, I have many thoughts of my mom about the community. Even at some of the hardest points of her life, she still reached out to people and she still felt like unity was the way. And the reason that I pretty much say that, she would talk to people that I used to look crazy at her to talk to. She would take some of the people who was in some of the most worst situations and actually give them stuff out of our home when we had limited stuff and our background. So to answer your question, I want to be 100% precise. She loved the hell out the community that she was in. Ain't no way for me to be politically correct with it. She loved the hell out of them people. She actually believed that they was the future. She believed that they made a difference. And then they also embraced her when she was at her worst. When she didn't have money, they would give her $10. When she didn't have the things she need, they would reach out. So guess what? You can't turn against your resources. You can't turn against your base and the people who actually made a difference for you. Or as we like to say, crossing over. At the end of the day, she loved the hell out of the community that she was with. Sometimes I used to look at her like she was crazy. Like, let's move out of here. Let's go. But that was later on when I didn't realize the power of the people that she was dealing with or the fact that she was a Black Panther. I didn't realize that she had different organizations and groups that she was reaching out to really make a difference. I didn't know that she knew all these celebrities in the beginning. I didn't realize that a tour and reaching out in unity really made a difference as far as people. Because even when she died, some of the most interesting, most profound people came to actually see her. I ain't never saw nobody who, even if you pull them up right now, their whole death and funeral is on Google. You can actually tell her name and go from there. She's laying there like the queen that she is, on from there. If she didn't make a difference, and she didn't believe in unity, and she didn't believe in fighting for her rights and the different people, that church would have been empty. Because guess what? Unity is a hard thing to hold on to without equality, without harmony, without justice, without people fighting for what they believe in. Loving and not doing anything about it is a waste of energy. But she actually did something. She created the tour. She stood alongside the people. She was the voice of the voiceless. And even when my mom grieves you, if she was still alive and I would know that she is in this room, she had two words. You knew that it could be a loving words, or you knew that it could be, it's time to put our boots on and do what we need to do. It was, hey, love. And she said it with the most compassionate fight within her. It was, hey, love. You don't know if somebody coming at you saying, hey, love, we finna go over here to this other project, get these people rallied together and fight because the police done went upside somebody's head. Mm-hmm. You don't know what it is. You just know that your parent or your loved one gave you a confrontation of, hey, love. Hey, love could be, I love you. Hey, love could be, hello, how your day going? Hey, love could have been, hey, love. Depending on the tone, things changed. Notice how I did that? How I changed it up. It was a loving confrontation. Hey, love. Hey, love. How you doing, love? Hey, love. Now you know you're in trouble. But you know you still got to deal with this person because this is the person who truly loves you. And anytime she gave you discipline, you knew it was for a good reason, even if you didn't understand it. Nobody understands 15 years from now, your words finna make a new race of people, make them strong and fight for their independence. Nobody know that your words that you say right now might change somebody or touch them so deeply that they're gonna touch the mind that's gonna change the world, like Tupac used to say.
This episode of Out of the Archives was curated by Mark Jeschke, Liu Chen, and Sharon Lanza, with writing, editing, and narration by Mark and Liu. The episode was mixed and mastered by Seth Engel. The theme song for Out of the Archives is titled Born in the Blues, written, performed, and recorded by former Stateway Gardens resident Keith Hudson. Out of the Archives is made possible through the generous support of the Illinois Arts Council Agency, the Kresge Foundation, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, and the Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. We'd like to give one last huge thanks to our oral history narrators, J.L. Gross, Reverend Marshall Hatch, Milton Reed, former Representative Bobby Rush, Daphany Rose Sanchez, Larry Turner, and head coach Tanisha Wright, as well as the oral historians who recorded their stories, Liu Chen, Troy Gaston, Nancy Goodman, Mark Jeschke, Shakira Johnson, Dr. Lisa Lee, Karen Patterson, and Francesco De Salvatore. For more oral histories, check out the other episodes of the Out of the Archives podcast at nphm.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to sharing more stories with you soon.